back live on Twitch unless I've pressed a button incorrectly. This is the second of these basic introduction to Neverwinter Nights toolset, Aurora toolset use. Now the Aurora toolset was first used in Neverwinter Nights but was later used in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and The Witcher. It continues to get used by some people studying game design just because it's a good introduction to how many of these engines work even today. And it was used in some pretty important titles. My name is Irongron. I am the primary content creator, owner and lead of Aurora. I also worked professionally on the Neverwinter Nights premium module Tyrants of the Moonsea as lead level designer, and was scheduled to work on an unfortunately cancelled Forgotten Realms title I can't go into details of, but I've plenty of experience working with this admittedly outdated engine. I started a couple of years ago trying to do these tuition videos, but between real life and developing for Aurora, I never really managed to keep doing them. So basically this is me mostly starting afresh. That video is still out there if you want to keep looking at it. This is the second video. The first video was very short. I was just talking about how to open and create a module. The reason I say open is because I've downloaded the Aurora engine, which is what I'll be working on when I do these videos, from the Neverwinter Nights Vault. Here it is, Gigashatten's PW Engine version 4 Aurora edition. This is on the Neverwinter Nights org website. So yeah. This basically is where you can get all of your hack content and module content. I'm not using hacks. This isn't a hack. This is just the module itself. This basically allows you to work within the Aurora engine. Just makes it a bit easier as you don't have to work with lots of scripts and the like. In this second video, I'm just going to go through the basic tile sets one at a time. Say what's good about them, what's bad about them. I'm just going to go in the list that they appear in the order they appear in, and yeah, have a bit of a talk about them, point out bugs, build a little with them. So creating an area, right click on area, go to new. Now you can name your area and then you can choose the tile set from the list. Okay, so here are the tile sets. It's worth always using a system when you're naming your areas, unless you're creating a secondary document that's listing them area 01, area 02. Name them something that you can remember. This is also where they appear on your list. So in this case, I'm going to be calling it tile set review barrows, because that's the first one on the list. It's an odd place to start, but okay, no, that's too long. So okay, in that case, I'll call it review barrows. Okay, so in fact, I'll call it tile set barrows. Should have considered this before I started. Okay, so when I click next, now you can choose the size of the area. Now, when you're working with more complex tile sets that have a lot more to offer, particularly if you're working in cities, you might be tempted to create a large area. If you're working with houses or small areas of roleplay, then of course you want it to be smaller. But there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. If you want your characters to have a view off into the distance, then you could use a larger area. This goes as high as 32. So you can actually double it from the largest possible option. But then keep the playable area quite small. Maybe you put a forest around it, a wall, and allow the players to look into the distance and see the city beyond. That can be really good when working on some campaigns or to give something a greater sense of space, because you're going to get this border around the area which can look pretty ugly. There is ways around that, which I'll talk about in the tiles set, in the placeable tuition, but in this case I'm going, because I want to show everything Tileset can do, I'm going to be working with larger areas. For players, if you have large areas, expect they're probably going to have to backtrack quite a lot. And in my experience, no matter how pretty you make an area, there's going to be some resentment if you're making the players walk backwards and forwards repeatedly, particularly on a persistent world. You know, there's obviously some of that is of course going to happen, but you don't want it to be too much. Make sure you've actually got content to put in the area. Sometimes people will enjoy going between smaller areas. Because we're using the Aurora engine and the spawns will generally be the same across an entire area, that they will repeatedly meet the same spawn group in one area. When you change it between areas, then you can change the spawn group, you can change the lightings. But anyway, I am going to use a larger area, but I'm not going to choose a larger area here. I'm going to choose tiny, 2 by 2, and I'll explain why in just a second. Just want to say, if you have any questions about tileset use, I won't respond to YouTube comments because basically everything with the Aurora name just gets bombarded with a fair amount of poison. But here on Twitch, on Discord, if you've got questions now, ask them, I will answer. So, tiny. Why tiny? Well, not going to be so clear in the Barrows tile set, but when you start with a tiny area, you can make certain additions that will then be duplicated across all of it. So, 4 tiles. They're black because I haven't put anything in them. If this was a large area, there'd be 16 empty black tiles. And there, here, now it's appeared on the left-hand list in areas, tileset Barrows. Creatures, this will list the creatures you've put there, doors, encounters, items, merchants, placeable, sound, triggers, waypoints, everything you have in the area can be accessed from the drop-down list on the side. We're not really concerned with that. In this tileset review, we're actually more interested in these things. The features the tileset can have. These are normally 1 by 1, as in they cover 1 tile, 1 by 1 models. There's an entrance, platform 1, platform 2, side chamber groups. These are larger things. Down corridor, up corridor, exit down, and final area. This is actually an interesting tile that one can do some pretty magical things with. It's actually what's used on Aurora to create a lot of the flying locations. And then terrain, the basic different types of terrain. So for instance, this is Barrows, corridor, doorway, and a razor, which will basically erase anything you've put in. Keep in mind that wherever you choose features, you still have to add in the sounds separately. So just as you can see a fountain or something there, or a fire, you're not going to be able to hear it. That's done via sounds, which will be covered in a different video. So why did I choose tiny rather than anything else? Well, some tile sets will allow you to use raise and lower the terrain. This one doesn't. But for instance, let me put down Barrow. Now, this is an interior tile set. But if I do this and make it all floor, and now I can resize it by going up to here. Edit, you can rotate the area and resize the area. These are basically the main things, the main tools you're going to want to use when working with tile sets. You can copy and paste tile, but now I can put it to the size that I want. So Let's say now I put it 1818. Now you see it's created this huge flat land. Now, had I started with 18 by 18, I'd have got all black. It would be an interior area. And this is a good trick for how to make exteriors out of interior tile sets. In area properties, and again, I'll talk about this in a different video, the area properties, probably the one directly after this, you can put a sky in here. You could put tree placeables, whatever. So this is one of the key things when working with a tile set. Is it versatile? Can you do something with it which wouldn't otherwise be possible? So now I can put walls in. Then once I've put this wall down, for instance, I could add an interior area, add a corridor going in, maybe with a door. Oh, the doorway's already there. You can see it there. Add enough of these and you've basically created like a small house. Keep in mind, if you see these black areas, as a player you can't generally see over them unless there's a problem with the tile set. A lot of these Neverwinter Nights tile sets, they don't have it, particularly if they're interiors, they don't have any depth to them. They go up this high and very rarely any higher. So let's have a look at what we can do with the barrows. It's intended as an interior, but you can see here how I could turn it into an exterior. Let's have a quick look at what it's got. So this is the exit. This would go along the edge of your area. And then platforms. These are just generally, so this is, it's like a little hole thing. Another platform here. Let's turn the lighting on, see if we get a bit more color to this. And another platform. Secret passage. Now, you can cover this up with, there are placeables for use with this tile set. This is unusual. Not many tile sets have this, but this does have it. If I go to the placeable menu, and of course I will be doing this in another video, but because this is particularly to the Barrows tile set, I just want to point it out. I go to Parks and Nature. Here, Boulder Green. These are all for use with this tile set. This says Boulder Green secret door because you can walk through it. So there, you put that over there, but walk through it, you get to the other side. So you can see these green boulders match this tile set. Most tile sets have doors that match them, which are automatically like built in. For this particular tile set, it is the boulder door. Let's just find it. We'll put it in here. Doors, universal stone boulder. There, you can see this green door there. Okay, let's go back to the main tile set thing. Side chamber, this basically is something for adding into a wall. Because I've made the whole area open, this doesn't work so well. I mean, keep in mind, normally this tile set will look like this. You'll be working with it as an interior. Everything will be black and you'll be filling in the corridor. So let me just, it's basically like a paint program, let me just fill this in. Side chamber, guess that work comes down a corridor, does it maybe? Or from the side of a barrow. If it's red, if it's showing as red, that basically means it doesn't work, doesn't attach to wherever you're trying to put it. So I'm right clicking to rotate it, and there you can see when it turns green I can place it. Now I can place it. So it's a side chamber for the barrows here. Stone circle. Not stone circle as you'd imagine it. This is just a circle of stones on the floor. And then some stone formations. small sections that you can just put into the wall. You turn the lighting off, actually that might be a bit too hard to see. Okay, now let's look at the larger groups. Corridor down. You can basically put this on the end of your corridor and it leads to a doorway. There's a transition. Now if you see this slightly blue transition with the arrow, that means it's automatically filled in the transition. You don't need to put a door over it. You just click on it, it'll take you to the next area. We'll talk about transitions another time when I do a tuition about doorways. Then we have another corridor up, then a separate corridor up. Now here, you can see, because there's no transition, there's no door, there's just this transition you can walk through. Here it's created a doorway. That means you have to actually put a door on yourself and set it up. So there, I can put a door in there of any type I want. What else do we have on this tile set? Another exit down. So you can see there's not much in this tile set to work with. So let's have a look at the final area. Because the final area does something kind of weird. This isn't normal for these tile sets. So here we have a huge area. Okay, so why does it look like this? Well, let's see. Turn off tile animation loop 1 to remove the white pillar location textures. So when you click on a tile, right click on a tile, you get the tile properties. Animation loop 1, animation loop 2, animation loop 3, and you set the areas. If I do this animation loop 1, then give me a second. Tile set's hanging. Just check. I can see there's questions coming in on both Twitch there. I'll answer in a minute. So I've turned off the animation, and that white thing has vanished, but that doesn't affect the walk mesh. You could still walk across it. Now, the Enhanced Edition allows you to see where the walk mesh goes by you going to Environment, Render. Oh, okay, and it's crashed. Some tile sets this function doesn't work on. Render AABB nodes will show you the walk mesh and where it goes. This doesn't work on this tile set I'm seeing now. This is a bug that can be reported to the team still updating. Neverwinter night, so apologies there. It basically means I have to reload this module because it's going to crash. So I'm keeping the stream going, but I'm just stopping sharing my screen for a minute while I reload it. I'm still here. I'm just having to restart the tire tool set because it crashed. As I said before, you know, this is all about needing to save often. So I'm just stopping the module, restarting it now. I'm being prompted, do I want to start from the backup? Because it does automatically back up every now and then, which I am doing. Okay, I turn this back on. Okay, so we're back live on Twitch, and I will be ready on Discord in just a second. Okay, so it's reloading from the backup. Tileset Barrows actually even did save, but it probably only saved when I created it there. You can see, so none of the stuff that I bet out there worked. Let me make this larger. Go back to where we were. Groups. Final area. Okay. So this is where the walk mesh is. Now you don't want the players to see the white. The reason that's there is it's helping you where to put the placeables in. So if I go to miscellaneous, I think it is, or miscellaneous interior. Okay, it must be in miscellaneous interior. Pillar barrows. Did you see that then? Hope you all did. Here we are. Here are these barrow pillars. You'll need to adjust the locations to get them in the right place. Let me just right click, bring that up. So basically these pillars you can put directly under the walk mesh in that location. Oops, the wrong one. Basically means people will be able to walk across them. So you just basically move them so they're directly under the location in the right place. You can see there how I did that. You basically know where they go. Let's do number 4. I'm not doing this exactly because it'll take ages. Just fiddling around with numbers. Okay, so once I've put these in, I can then have to do that twice. Turn off the animation loop so it gets rid of that white field. And then so the characters can basically walk across these pillars and get to the middle. They could walk across even if the pillars are not there. This is just a visual thing, the way this rather unusual tile set was introduced. It isn't normal that you see this with a lot of the Neverwinter Nights tile sets, but the Barrows does have this feature. Now, by using what's called tile splicing, you can end up using this area to create a void, a entirely black area pit. Put the sky mesh in and it will give you the sky in, it will give you the effect of flying in an area. Now, if I go to resize area and I cut off the edge of the area, you see, when I cut off the edge of that tile set, it removed that entire tile group. So I go to resize area, chop 1 off the side, no problem. Chop another 2 off the side, no problem. Chop another 1 off the side, and still no problem. But 1 more. And there it's deleted the entire pit. So you have to use, I believe, to get this to work, tile splicing. Tile splicing is basically an artificial way of cutting bits out of an area. It's a bit finicky. You see when I click on the group, it selects all of the tiles. So it can only work with all the tiles. You can see this. Left click any other tile, it selects the whole thing. Now if I hold down shift, press right click, that turns to blue. Now I should be able to cut just that one. Well, in that case it didn't work. In some case it does. It's a way you can cut just one tile out. It's tricky to work with this tile set doing that. We'll look at it more in tile sets where it's easier to work with. So okay, let's just quickly review this Barrow tile set then. There isn't a great deal you can do with it. There's not many different features and groups. Versatility, unless you're doing what I showed you at the beginning where you used to create this big flat area and then basically try to use it to create an exterior area, there's not going to be much you're going to be able to do. You pretty much can only use it to make barrows of corridors and, you know, placeables. Because they're doesn't have pits in terrain. It's kind of hard to use VFX to add any water or anything. I always find it kind of hard when these tile sets don't have pit here. You can see you've basically got two options, either barrows or corridor, and that's it. That's the only two basic terrains. And then you can add the groups and features on the top, but the groups and features, they only work in the barrows area. So it really is extremely basic. Another problem with this tile set is the color. It gets a bit jarring. You know, it's quite well textured, but again, it's not particularly versatile. You can see everything is with these green rocks. Now, if you get into Neverwinter Nights development, particularly the development communities, there is a method by which you can retexture tile sets now. It's quite a script-heavy system. We use it on Aurora to retexture some of the areas in the Underdark, for instance, to give what would be the fort interiors light stone walls, a darker tone. So, you know, theoretically, you replace the textures here with textures from Steamwork, or make the metal, the walls metal, and so on and so forth. But you know, it's pretty enough, this tile set, but it really lacks versatility. You're pretty much going to have to use it for what it's intended for, which is a dungeon, you know, and not necessarily a bad thing. It's got the boss area in place, you know. This is where you would put the boss. Now, what I often do when working with this tile set is, I'd say, have the characters coming in from here. Have the boss on the central platform. So let's say we're going to be having a dragon. This is Dungeons and Dragons after all. It's okay. Dragon's tiny. We'll talk about creatures again in a later stream. Change the creature properties so it's got long range sight or long range abilities, and it might start firing spells off from the middle. Or if you have archers there, the characters need to run around or fight their way round the pit to then enter from the other side before they can deal with a boss. So if you have a ranged capable boss, put it in the middle here, fights around the outside, you know, characters are going to have to move quickly, because even if they can defeat the enemies spawning around the outside, they're going to keep getting hit by whatever you've put in the middle, and in order to deal with it, they have to get right around the pit and head in that way. But yeah, not a lot of versatility. That's the Barrows tile set. Let's just check the questions that have popped up, and then I'll move on to the next tile set after having a sip of tea. So on Twitch, in creating it in areas like a house or stable in rural tile set, is there a golden rule of how many tiles the 2x1 house should be in the interior area? Well, when you're creating a stables or a house, these actually are generally in groups. They're set sizes. So features, for instance, like I say, these are these 1x1 features you can add in to change the theme of an area. Groups are set tile areas. We'll talk about that more when I get into the rural interior. But generally, there's not really a golden rule, because you are working with groups, and those groups come at a set size. If you're creating it yourself, then the size of the area is going to depend on how much you're going to have in there, how many players are going to be using it, and how big those players are. We recently redid our ogre cavern in the Underdark on Aurora, and of course ogres are huge, so they need a lot of space and moving around. Okay, let's move on to our next tile set, because we've got a lot to cover here. Beholder caves. Okay, so we're starting with some pretty odd ones here. Beholder caves is interesting. Very similar to the one we've just looked at, in that it is extremely basic, but it's got a couple of interesting features. So let's have a look. So in this case, I'm going to start medium. Oh, I want to change the name of it to Tileset Holders. So this is similar to the barrows for basically two main reasons. One, it has a very limited amount of features you can add, meaning it has little versatility. And other is that it's hard to repurpose as anything else. So let's look at this. It's so basic, there are no features at all. And the only terrain is corridors. So all you can do is create corridors or use one of three groups. A big boss area here. I mean, it's pretty, no doubt, it's pretty. Beholders are a big part of the game, so of Dungeons and Dragons. So here, pillar room. Okay. And pit room, basically the same with a hole in the middle. And you can add corridors into them so creatures move around. So there's very little to say about this, but the two things I do have to say about this tile set are both very interesting. So Neverwinter Nights has a whole bunch of different creature models. There's a dragon. Here is a spider. Let's do a skeleton. And finally, let's go to planar. Oh no, aberration. That's where the beholders are, isn't it? Beholder. Okay, so why have I chosen these four creatures specifically? Well, because each of these four creatures has a built-in unique spawn animation, an animation that plays as the creature spawns in. On Aurora, we have to set that up specifically, but when you're using the basic spawn system, then they should use their basic spawn-in animations. Spiders drop down from the sky on a line of web, as if they're falling from a tree. Dragons will fly down from the sky. Zombies, undead, they will crawl out of the earth. And beholders, crucially, and we're not seeing this on Aurora at the moment, basically because I'm a bit too slow to be able to set it up properly. Beholders one moment, they can animate to rise out of these holes. So if you've played the single player campaign, you've probably seen a beholder rise up out of these holes and then attack. So beholders have this unique spawn in animation that is specifically tied to this tile set. I think they can even come out of the walls here. I know it can be done. I've not done it on Aurora, but that's what these holes are for. These holes are for beholders to come out of. Now, most creatures just don't have a spawn-in animation. They'll just fall from the sky, basically. But they shouldn't. That shouldn't happen near to the characters, or they just appear. But these four, they have their own special spawn animations, and the beholder spawn animation, or maybe one of the bosses, there's a few different beholder models, rise out of the ground. So as we move on, we're going to look at some really interesting tile sets with a lot of versatility. And this beholder tile set is a strong contender for the absolute worst tile set, at least until the most recent update of Neverwinter Nights, where new tile sets were added. But you know, this is bad. But it can do something interesting, which I just pointed out. So just undo that. So I created this pit room and this pillar room, but look what happens if I hit eraser. I can erase that, and now I've got a round room. Okay, that gives me a bit more to work with. But what you can do, which not many people know. Now, as I said, you can only create corridors and round rooms, but look what happens if I resize this area to make it too tall. Now I've cut off the edge of that room. Now, if you extend an area, it will duplicate the edge of the tile. So now I extend it to 3. Okay, now this is interesting. Now I'm doing something different. Something that isn't normally permitted by the way it works. So now here I'm creating this really long room that the tile set itself wouldn't initially allow for. But enough of these holes along the side, and you can have an area where beholders jump out at you every couple of meters. But I can do something else here. I can cut off the edge, and now resize that to 20. Okay, now I've got this huge empty area. Resize this to 25. Okay, so now I have this huge sort of weird alien looking floor. And then I can start using these walls Now, if you do this and use a lot of placeables, mushrooms or whatever, you can create a very strange, larger cave. This is how I made the lower dark areas for Aralith, by using this tile set, doing what I just showed you there. The problem is, once you've placed down a wall, you can't erase it. Erasing doesn't do anything here. So you can't get rid of it because there's no floor option here. You have to be really careful. Basically, once you've placed something down, you're stuck with it. Because this isn't how the tile set was intended to be used, but it's a much better way to use it because you're not stuck just doing these, having these circular corridors. So this is the only tile set that one can really do that with. It's not using tile splicing. It's just about resizing the area, cutting the edge of the area off, and creating these kind of landscapes. So that's pretty interesting. You know, if you're working without hacks, you're going to want to get the most out of every tile set. And the Beholder tile set, you know, it's just round tubes. It's going to get tiring. But being able to do this with it basically has the ability to create a new tile set. Beholder spawning is from comment from Cohetius on our Discord, saying it's from Hordes of the Underdark. Yeah, it's pretty cool that they come out of these holes. We really need to get that working on Aralith. So okay, that's the Beholder tile set. It's very basic core review, super basic tile set, very few groups and terrains, no versatility. Textures they're alright, I guess. Some of these like smoking animations, but you know, this is only good to use for what it was intended for, which is, you know, beholders. We also use it for stingers and a couple of other things, but yeah, you're not going to be using it that often. Okay, so let's move on to our next tile set. So, tile set, castle exterior rural. Okay, I'm going to be on this one for a while because this is the Kingmaker tile set. To some developers, it's the finest tile set on Neverwinter Nights, at least before the Tyrants of the Moonsea tile sets got released into the main game. For some, it is the absolute worst. Why? Well, Let's take a look. So, just going to start this off at tiny to illustrate a point I wanted to make before, but I couldn't because it's not a raise or lower tile set. This one is, so. Now let's imagine that you want to create a slope, or you want the area to be quite high up. If you've got 25 by 25 area, making everything go up and down could take an absolute age. So here, I'm going to go to raise lower, make it a bit higher. Let's just imagine I need quite a high area. Okay. And let's imagine that I've got an area where I want to have like a pit in the middle. I want it to like a volcano, like a crater. I'm going to lower that. This is done with right and left click here. Lower that again. It's hard to see. This tile set, when you lower it, it does it with slopes, and the original tile sets don't. They don't have slopes. They have these very rigid drops when you lower a tile that's then connected with these quite sort of artificial looking slopes. This one, the quite artificial looking ramps. This one actually has slopes, but you can see there. Now, when I resize, let's go up to 25. Let's go up to 30 actually. Let's say we're making a huge area. Now that slope continues all the way to the end. Okay, now let's raise the one at the end, because I say we want a crater, so we only want it to go down equally. So you can see I've managed to replicate that entire drop. But okay, let's do it this way instead. So go one at a time. Let's lower it again. Okay, so now it's lowered and lowered again. Let's resize it again. Oops. Let's go down a bit further. Oh, I've got the shadows on, so it created this weird black thing. Okay. Just going to move it one step further. Let's lower that again. And we'll make it a longer one. Do that again, and then lower that in this corner again. Repeat the same thing, doing this one at a time. Now this is just a much quicker way than if I started with a flat area and then tried to manually create this crater. Okay, so now I'm happy to have my crater run the entire length here. So basically, if you start small, you want to be you doing slopes, then starting with a tiny area, adjusting it, and then expanding the area is the way to go. Okay, now I'm just going to go back to a 2x2 area, because one of the problems with working with this tile set is it's got all of these really interesting groups here. So much compared to the last one we were looking at. I mean, look, it's got city, castle, cliff, grass. It's huge. Now, this is all grass here, so grass is what we're interested in. You'll see I can't necessarily put some of these things down because we're on this slope. So you kind of need to create the flat areas first, because it's like See, it's straightening the area there. Oh, that's city actually. So it becomes kind of difficult to work with. Sometimes, like, it won't let me place something if the area is sloped and the thing is flat, and all the things are flat. So it gets quite tricky. So let's just make our area flat again. And it's hard to see if the area is flat because it uses these slopes. So I'll just lower it back down to the minimum height. Okay, so it's going to take a while. Let's go through. See what we have. Let's make the area large, so just a big flat area. I'm going to make it huge because there's so much on this tile set to work with. So first of all, the different terrains. So Castle High is a terrain. Just like grass, it's a terrain. Castle Low and then City, which will just be what you'll see, it's just a section of brown dirt. But the city, when we add buildings, they're not on grass, the city buildings, they're on this brown dirt. Raising and lower the grass. You can't raise or lower the city or the castle, it's just the grass. They're the grass we have. Grassy trees, this is what you see in other tile sets. It's just very basic, you can't walk through them, looks very ugly, but just a sort of line of trees. Joust lists. Now, Kingmaker had a jousting system. We haven't introduced it on Owlif. It has its own menus. I'd love to introduce it, but I've asked some developers to look into it. It's a bit tricky. Lake Moat. Low Wall. Ridge. Now, a ridge will only... You can see it's red, it's not letting me place it. Ridge is when you have a slope. So look, if I go raise, lower, raise, lower, raise, lower, you can't really see, but there's some raised terrain there. Then I can put the ridge there. Road. Road will go through both rural and city. Now, sea cliffs are interesting. Look what happens when I place these down. Basically creates this giant pit that leads down to the sea. So you can have cliffs at the edge of your land leading down to the sea. Then once you've got your sea, you can then use the sand crosser. This is basically like the corridors in the interior tile sets. You can either put them right up against the cliffs, or you can have them reach out into the water. Okay, so these are our basic terrains for this. Now, when you're working with tile sets, keep in mind that a lot of the tiles will have different variations. It will load a random one when you place it, but to cycle through them, you just use the eraser here. Most tile sets, in fact all tile sets, will have the eraser. Find the eraser, this is in terrain, find the tile and click on it. It doesn't remove the terrain, it cycles through the different options. So there's like stairway with a door, we could put a door in there, a nice window. Here I can change what is appearing on the top of this building. These aren't added by features or groups, this is just done by clicking on the eraser, seeing what options there are. Could take a while to find them, but you know. It's very important to know that you can do that. Doing it on grass will sometimes create rocks, sometimes create trees. If you found one that you like, then click off here, this top here, paint terrain. This is the painter for all the different resources of the game. The terrain one is here. When you're working with tile sets, this is crucial. Click on and off it again, so you've not got anything selected here. And now you can start copying. So if I draw a little box, or if I put this here, so I've selected just that tile. Let's see, just the tile with this tree, and then copy, and now paste. I can place down that tree again. So you don't always have to use a razor. If you found a tile that you like, and it's crashed. Again, save frequently, save often. It tried to paste it, it didn't like it, and it crashed. I have to stop and start the tool set. I will be right back. I'm still streaming. Stop sharing my stream for a second while I relaunch it, but I am still here. Okay, so once again, when I'm relaunching it now, it's just asking me to whether I want to open the backup. The backup will normally be from when you very first created the last tile set. So I've got it back here again, which I'll start streaming again now. We'll do in just a second. Okay, so I'm back on Twitch. I'm just showing my screen on Discord again. So now when I go back to my tile set castle interior, I'll be back with whatever it was when I very first opened it, yeah, which is just this tiny area. So I showed you the different terrains. Now with each of these terrains there is a huge amount of options. There's too many to go into. Some will be quite hard to place. For instance, if we go to castle and castle gate 2 passage walkable, that means that you can't walk along all of it. If you're not sure where you can walk, let me just click and remove this door. Now here there's a passage through beneath, and there is something visible on top. But remember, Neverwinter Nights is a two-dimensional environment. You can't have a walk mesh up here and a walk mesh down here. If you're not sure where the walk mesh goes, just use a creature. Find a creature, any creature, in this case a battle horror, slide it around. Now you can see it's going through the passage, so the passage is walkable. Up here, this is not walkable. It's walkable until you get to there, until the very edge here. So you're going to want to put some kind of blocker in here, this little fence, something, so people don't get confused why they can't walk there. So keep in mind, when it says passage walkable, that means you can walk through the passage. Sometimes the passage will not be walkable and the above thing will be walkable. So you need to experiment to see which is working. Like here, the passage, where is this miner gone? Is this one? This one, it's the passage is walkable again. But this one you can see on one side is grass, on one side is city. So you're going to need to use city on one side here and grass on the other. This is basically a city entrance. So figuring out where you can place things, like for instance I can't, because this gate here is grass on this side, I can't extend the city over to it. There is so much. There's drawbridges here. There's these lots of different types of gates and castle walls and towers. For the city itself, there's all of these. Loads of different types of houses, market stalls, graves. You can do so much with the city here. But that's not all. It doesn't end there. For the cliff, you've got all of the ships here. So for instance, let's say I wanted to use this tile set to create a sea area. I've changed it to 2 by 2. I'm going to go down here to sea cliffs. Okay, so now it's just water. Then I will go to resize area. I will go to large, and now I've just got this large body of water, admittedly with too many stones. I want to get rid of the stones, so I'm going to use a razor until I get a tile without any stones. And then I'm going to click on that one tile. Remember, I clicked off this to just something else and then back to tile to make sure I'm not selecting everything. Edit, copy, edit, paste, put that down, paste again. Oh, is it really going to crash again? No. Paste again. Doesn't need to take that long. Now I've got a section of 2 here without. I can copy the 2, paste that. As soon as I've got a bigger section without any stones, do the same again. This time with a bigger section, 9 by 9. Oh, sorry, 4 by 4. Okay. Now I've got this 8 by 8 section. Doesn't take long because you're able to double it every time and eventually go end up with just a big area without any rocks. So this says Castle Rural, but now I've turned it into just a big body of water. So then I can go back to my list of cliff options. And what have I got? I can put a boat in the water here. Another boat here. This one will be, hang on. This one's anchored. A drawbridge. So it'd have to be at the edge here. The drawbridge would work if I have to set it up properly. So let's have a look. I need so I'm going to need some grass here, I guess. Is that grass? God knows how that is working there. Does that have city or grass? It's hard to tell. I think that might be city. Yeah, maybe that is city. Well, no, it can't be. Must be grass. So it's going to need a bit of experimenting to figure out. Is that castle high? Then we have the castle right on the edge there. Drawbridge. Oh no, it must be castle low. Okay, let's try castle low. See, castles can go right up to the edge. Okay, drawbridge. There we are. Cool. Okay, now we've got a drawbridge, so now we can go to the bridge here. Not that bridge. We don't use the bridge, we use a road. The road can extend over the water. See, that's rather neat looking. With a drawbridge, you click on that drawbridge and the drawbridge will open and close. This tile set is hugely versatile. You can create some really interesting areas. I really enjoyed using it to create the city of Zental Keep for the official Tyrants of the Moonsea module. Now, with Tyrants of the Moonsea, we added in some new stuff to this tile set, which I'll quickly show here. One is Cliff Road Gate. No, not that one. Where is it? This wall cave is rather nice. That is not what I'm thinking of. It should be here somewhere. It's basically a dock shipped with a little walkway. I don't see it, but it should be here somewhere. Maybe it's in another list. Maybe it's in city or grass. Boat landed, cave entrance 1, cave entrance 2, path down, ship docked. Ah, here. This is something new we added in with these docks. So from a sand crosser, because beforehand there wasn't a good way to go from a sand crosser onto a ship. So these were actually things that I specifically asked for to be made for Neverwinter Nights when working with Tyrants of the Moonsea to improve it. So yeah, that's a new addition. There's something else new here that we haven't used on Aurolith yet, I don't think, unless one of the other developers have, and that is, if I go to grass here, there's so much to work with here, but where are they? Thatched houses. These little thatched houses, they're also new. And one other thing that I asked for to be added. In the city there is a chapel. Let's have a look at the chapel. I have to put a city area down to be able to show you it. You see, the city can't extend to the edge of the cliff, so okay, let's go to the city chapel. This stone chapel, it's a rather nice pretty building, including the original version of this tile set. But when working on Tyrants of the Moonsea, I had to create like a hunting lodge, which was a similar shape, but it's supposed to be made of wood. So I asked for a wooden variation of that to be made. So hunting lodge. It's the same building, but with wood and stone. So that's also new. If you've been working with Neverwinter Nights in the past, you wouldn't have seen that. Again, this is all in the base game. You don't need hacks for it. So, okay. This tile set then. City, exterior, rural. If you're going to want to create a more modern looking Neverwinter Nights environment, then you're going to be very tempted to use this tile set. It's hugely versatile. There's a huge amount of resources on it, but finding things and working out how to place them properly can be a challenge. It can be prone to crashing because, you know, it is relatively complex. You could spend hours and hours experimenting with this, but there is so much you can do. It still looks pretty in 2024. You can still create some, you know, really interesting environments with it. It's great, you know. Had Neverwinter Nights continued to develop as was planned before Atari abruptly pulled the plug halfway through the production of a premium module, we would have seen a lot more tile sets like this. You may well, if you're working with hack content or want to Google in the Neverwinter Nights vault, take a look at the Blood War tile set. Now, the Blood War tile set was actually made by professional developers for a discontinued from a discontinued expansion to Neverwinter Nights. This was for a premium module that never got produced because Atari pulled the plug to work on Neverwinter Nights 2. The tile set remained lost for many years until some developers got it from the people that made it and put it back together. It is just beautiful. We use a version of it on Aurolith that's retextured to work with the Underdark, but I mean, it's great. It's really high quality. And it uses as the template the tile set we were just looking at. I mean, just get a load of that. It is great. It's a beautiful hack. So, you know, again, you can see Zverkules put it back together for them. He didn't create it himself. He completed it from this discontinued premium module in like 2008, but this is the direction Neverwinter Nights would have gone in had it continued being developed. So pretty interesting. And it's this tile set, Castle Exterior Rural, that lays the groundwork for it. It has a bad rep with some developers because it can be hard to use with, because it is a stylistic departure from what came before with Neverwinter Nights, but really, in my opinion, it's how Neverwinter Nights should have looked at from the outset. In 2002, when 2003, when Neverwinter Nights was first released, it came out already looking dated. A few years later, they were producing stuff like this. It shouldn't have been that way. It should have looked like this from the beginning, in my view. So, I need to take another sip of tea. I've not brought through so many of the tile sets, and we're yeah, looking at the next tile set in a minute. Sorry, I'm just seeing a report on Twitch discontinuing support for Twitch Studio after the 30th of the 5th. We've prepared a guide with tips on how to find and switch over to a broadcasting software that works for you. This is entirely new to me because I don't use Twitch very often. It's rather annoying if they're going to discontinue support for it. Whether that means I can still use it, or whether that means it's just not going to be protected from bugs, I don't know. But that's something I'm going to have to read about tonight, because this has been pretty important. I wonder why they're doing that. Okay, well, I'll move on. It gives me good of doing this today. So, to see if there's any questions on Twitch or here. No, not many viewers on Twitch, not many on Discord, certainly less than in the past. Let's move on to the next tile set. Before I do, it's always worth closing tile sets when you finish working on them. You can have them open in different tabs at the moment on Neverwinter Nights, but they will often, the more tabs you have open, the more likely they are to crash. So, City Exterior, the original. Before the one you just saw, this was how you made cities on Neverwinter Nights. There is a fantastic hack for this, which really improves the textures. You can download it as a override from the workshop, but the maker of it would much prefer you didn't, because it is really not good. The override version, the hack version, just greatly improves the textures, makes it look really, really good. But as I said, I don't want to use hacks on these streams. I want you to be able, for people just that are new to it, to be able to work with it straight away. But it's in this list here of hacks that I introduced at the beginning. Let me just find that for you. Yeah, here you can find it on the Neverwinter Nights Vault, Neverwinter Nights Facelift Hacks. There you will see the city. Let's just have a look side by side. This is before, this is the after. So you can see it is so much improved. So, where to begin with the city? Well, as always, the terrains. Basic terrains, the cobbles of the streets here. Dock, which you'll need to have water to use the dock, which is basically like a little road that goes over the water. Evil castle, which is basically like a big metal castle. Good castle. And most importantly, buildings. And again, you just do this by dragging things around. If you don't like the variation you've got, hit erase to cycle through the options. So there are basic terrains. Let's have a look at the groups that we have. There are so many. The arena is just like a little fighting arena. Don't confuse the arena with the absolutely massive arena, which is a beautiful piece of model work. Looks very good in the facelift. There's transitions built in there, so you can click on there to go in and out. It's all with walk meshes here. You can go in to this gladiatorial pit, watch from up in the stands, and fight. It will dominate an area if you put it in your city. I love how much height it has. It's because Neverwinter Nights often doesn't have a lot of height. I really like this building. It looks great with the hacks. There are a whole bunch of things you can use here. And features, there's a lot too. Lots of little towers to be used around your city walls, little markets, sewer entrances. You're going to be wanting sewers in your city, almost certainly, as a place for intrigue or just, you know, relatively low-level dungeons. This tile set has a raise lower function. So you can see it creates this wall around the edge. And then when you have this raise lower function with these older tile sets, in features you'll generally always find the ramp. If you don't find the ramp, then often just finding road, this one doesn't have it, and putting the road there, it will lean up, it will allow you to do it. So raise lower function. Now keep in mind, once you're at the bottom level, you can't lower any further. So again, when you're working with a tile set that's like this, start with tiny. Find your starting space here. So let me just change this to cobble. And then raise it, 3 or 4 times. Then resize it back to whatever size you want. And then that just means if for some reason while designing your city you suddenly decide you want to actually people to be able to go down, maybe you just want to have this for some reason or other, you want to have this pit, you can. It will just allow you to do more interesting things that you might not have been able to do otherwise. Yeah, maybe you want some sort of canal style thing. And if you decide part way through and you're already at the lowest level, you won't have the option to do that. So keep in mind, start with tiny, raise it a few sections. You always have the option of doing an area that is lowered. It has these little park things. I mean, you can cycle through again with a razor, but it doesn't have actual grass tiles. Now, if you have flat terrain and you're working with the newer Neverwinter Nights, if we go to parks and nature, I believe we have ground, grass, water, green, 2 by 2. Do we have grass here? Grass 3 by 12. Cool. Grass 2 by 2. When making hills far, is it? In Time to the Moon. See, this is why I added this in, because I wanted to have like a grass area outside the city, but visible from the city. So basically, let's say I put the city walls in. So in this case, I create the effect of having a city wall by using raise lower. I guess there's some kind of city gate option here. So here we have the city gate. Now, what I wanted to be able to do was to have a bit of nature outside, so this is why we added this in there. So if I erase this, so I've just got this totally flat terrain here, with nothing on that will cause a conflict for it to flicker. Then I go to the placeables that I just showed you. And to ground grass, 12 by 12. Just the location to 0. No, because I'm not at 0 because I raised the terrain at the beginning. Oops, my mistake. How much did I raise it by? I don't know. Okay, I raised it quite a lot. So you see, I've got it at the same level as the floor here, so that's going to flicker. That's no good. So I'll just put it at 16.01. Now it won't flicker. So now you see you've got, if you fill this, start adding like trees and rocks outside, it will look like, you know, you'll get to walk into the city from, you know, an outside that has like grass and stuff. So you can make up for the tile set not having grass inbuilt, but there's a lot one can do with this tile set. It's really not bad. It's a bit blocky. The older tile sets in Neverwinter Nights, it's clearer that everything is just basically being arranged in squares, but it's not a bad thing. It's nothing wrong with Neverwinter Nights looking pretty basic. And when you use the hack I showed you, it can look really rather nice. You can build pretty complex cities with this. Looks basic here because obviously I'm just showing you the different structures, but you can do quite a lot with City 1, and it's going to be basically your go-to tile set for whatever your main settlement is, almost certainly. So it's versatile, certainly very dated. It's got more of a sort of classical feel. It doesn't feel medieval in a lot of parts. It feels more kind of Roman, but it's yeah, it's not bad. It doesn't crash very much. It's certainly dependable. Always use the hack version of it. Not much more to say about the city tile set there. Can you cut off a Colosseum so it doesn't dominate the area center? It's a good question. I don't think you can, but let's go back to, I'll show you how tile splicing works. Okay, so as with most tile groups, if you cut off the edge, it will delete the entire thing. And this one is no exception. I'm not going to do it because it'll even cause the area to crash. I've tried to do it before, but no, unfortunately you can't. So you're left having to have these very big areas if you want to use it. I mean, often one tile is a house. Here, one tile is just steps. Now you could try tile splicing, so hold down shift, right click, turn that blue, then do cut. No, it doesn't work. It's not going to let you do it. You're not going to be able to cut it off. You're not going to be able to cut off parts of it. Ah, there. I used delete. Okay, so I can do it this way. So right click, so you've got this blue square. Nope, don't want to select all of it. Hold down shift, right click, then press delete. So you're getting this white void because you've got nothing in place there. You then have to cover it up with placeables. So that is your only real way to do this. Tile splicing allows you to create some pretty interesting buildings, things that aren't actually on the game, but it takes a lot of work to work with. So what I'm doing here is I'm holding down shift, I'm right clicking till something turns blue, then I'm hitting delete, and it will delete that tile. Let me give you an idea of how that could be used. So let's say I'm going to let's find a building. Okay. So I'm going to find something bigger actually. Good temple. Now I used tile splicing with a good temple to make the radiant heart, I believe, on in Aurora. So hold down shift, right click, and now I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to do this. See, if I normally left click, it selects the whole thing. If I hold down shift and right click, then hit delete, then I've removed that one particular part and it's turned into an ordinary tile. Now I can put that section that I just copied for here, and now look, I've got this bigger building. Of course it's missing pieces because you're not supposed to be working with it this way. So let's see, if I hold down shift, right click, press delete, that's deleted that. Hold down shift, right click, so that turns blue, copy, edit, paste. Now you can see it's created something a bit interesting. It's not part of the original group, but unfortunately it's got this white void here because there's no texture there. So if you're going to be using tile splicing, you need to be prepared to find placeables that you can use to cover up basically the holes you're making in the tile set. Tile splicing will allow you in some cases to create some very large buildings, like the Order of the Radiant Heart on Aurolith, that the game itself wouldn't have as part of it. So I put down that rubble there. So now I've covered up the hole. So yeah, tile splicing, I don't think you're going to be able to do much with the Colosseum with it, but certainly you can use it to create some larger buildings and create some pretty interesting environments. If you want to see what that looks like on Aurolith, then I believe the Sibayad Arena uses tile splicing with its tile set. The Radiant Heart uses this model in the rural tile set to create that. But anyway, that's City 1. It's a decent tile set. It's original, it's dated. With the update it looks better, but well, it's all good. Just removing that area so I can open the next one. City Interior and City Interior 2. So I don't need to look at both of these because they're basically the same tile set, where one has a slightly better texture. City Interior 2 was added later on in Neverwinter Nights development and is basically an almost exact repeat of City Interior 1, but with some new tiles. Now, City Interior has these basic types of terrain, ignoring corridors, which is just corridors. You have got inn, which is this. kitchen, which is this, living room, which is so with these chairs, and shops. So you can create your taverns, your kitchens, your living rooms. In groups, these are set interiors for set interior buildings. This can be something as simple as a lower home. So here you can see it's just a 2x2 home. You have to add the transitions in to the stairs. Or something sort of more exciting like this evil temple. Now you could try using tile splice to try and make some of these areas bigger, but with the evil temple it's an unusual shape, so it's quite hard to use. Good temple should look familiar to almost anyone that's played Neverwinter Nights. There's the good temple. Interior of the tent. And Wizard's Den. And the feature is mostly just for doing doors in and out of these main tile sets. The inn, the kitchen, the living room, the shop. And for doing stairs in the corner. So for instance, kitchen corner stairs. Basically add stairs going up in the corner of the kitchen. So let's have a quick look at the second one of these. This was added in some years later, and as you'll immediately see, it's almost identical. Here is inn. Here is kitchen. Living room, shop. It's just the textures are much improved. There is a couple of new groups, namely these big interior for the tents that are used in Kingmaker. Now these are for the big blue and red tents that you get that you have in Kingmaker. Now what I did here for these tents is I wanted to have a tent without these joust stands. So what I did was I used tile splicing. So I would right click, shift, delete, get rid of this, copy this side over, cover some things up, so you can do something else with that. So I mentioned earlier that the that you want to use these Zvercules hacks when working with the city tile set. Here, the interior tile set. It changes City 1 and makes City 1 much better. Now on Aurora, a lot of our later areas started using City 2 because obviously, I mean, let's look at the inn. Let's compare the inn here. That's the City 2 inn. This is the City 1 inn. The City 2 generally looks much better, but the Zvercules hack for improving City 1 makes it so much better. I believe it is this BioCity interior. I believe it is. Might have misremembered. But it is such an improvement to it that you really only want to work with City 1. It adds ceilings to all of the rooms, it adds windows so you can go in and out, but more importantly allows you to cut off baked in fixtures. With almost every default interior tile set for Neverwinter Nights, you'll be fighting with baked-in fixtures. That means that table by the wall, fireplace. You can't get rid of them. They're stuck there, and you have to build around them. It's very hard to create empty rooms. This basically means when you hit a razor to go through a tile, you won't get any options that are empty. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Just need to wait for this to finish. Okay, so let's go to back into the city here. A lot of times on Aurora, we have players writing on the forums that, yeah, I bought this house, but could you get rid of this table? Could you get rid of this loom? Well, actually you can't. Watch what happens when I hit a razor where this loom and bucket is. Chair, a loom. I just want an empty bit of floor, but it's not giving me the option. You can't get rid of it, and the same is true everywhere. The inn, no empty floor. It's always putting something there, and you can't get rid of it. So let me just see if I'm right with this, if this is the right tile set. Oh no, that's actually a totally different one. It's nice, but it's a totally different one. The one listed on the Neverwinter Nights vault on that link I've shown a few times basically will allow you to remove these things by clicking eraser, so you can create empty bits of floor, which is very good for using placeables or put windows in. It's well worth doing. In fact, you know, you absolutely should if you're creating a new module. These two tile sets are so limited by the fact that you can't remove stuff. There is some nice things. I mean, let's compare, for instance, this temple. This is the one from City 1. Let's have a look at the one in City 2. The alternate version of it. Put it down over here. Groups, temple, good, wasn't it? Is it the good temple? This is less marble, more kind of stone. But there's a lot of space here. You can do things with this. But when it comes to a lot of these, like the homes, for instance, you can't. It's already full of these baked-in fixtures. It's very hard to create any kind of empty rooms. Of course, it's useful. You're going to want to use it quickly. The baked-in fixtures aren't necessarily bad because you're going to want to be able to produce content quickly. City interior is really the only versatile interior that you can use for creating the insides of stables or the insides of barracks or whatever it is that you're trying to use. You're going to need to keep coming in here. Here you can see a ship's cabin, which is rather nice. It's even got like a view out of the window here, which is rather cool. Like if you're in there, you can see the view of the sea outside. This is done by this tiny little dome area you can see there, which is rather nice. Where is the neutral temple? Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, let's keep going through. Now, there are 3 tile sets that basically go together. That is the rural winter, and tropical. We'll go with tropical but they basically have exactly the same tiles. They just have different grass. The groups and the tiles, the features, the placeables, they're all the same. It's just the trees change. So this actually, you can't see it in the tile set, but this has really long grass in these areas. But the groups are the same. Barn, farm, ships, caves, temple. Oh, this one's actually different for tropical. So there are some variations, but for the most part, these three tile sets are very, very similar. They work with raise and lower. They can create some really pretty areas. So a lot of different groups, a lot of different features. Now, included in Neverwinter Nights now is the facelift version of Rural Winter. Rural Winter Facelift. Facelift is basically the one with improved textures and a couple of added features. Let's take a look. As I say, Rural Winter, Rural and Tropical, they're basically the same. Let's have a look at the groups. So, Good Temple. Same thing, but in the snow. You can raise and lower terrain. I really like the facelift version of it. It doesn't just improve the textures, it has this new terrain, the camp terrain, which I used for the first time here. And then if you go to features, you can drop down camp and add these watchtowers along the edge of the wall. And you can climb up that ladder, stand up there and look out. It's pretty basic, but it's rather nice. Now, if you go into the rural or the rural winter, you will see the same features: the cloak tower, the good and the bad temples, the caravan wagons, the mausoleums, the graves. It just changes whether it is snowy or whether it is not snowy. This can be pretty good if you're wanting to use Neverwinter Nights to run a tabletop campaign, because then you can make two versions of the same area, one with snow, one with summer, and have people go to different versions of it depending on, you know, what time it is in their campaign. But they're basically the same tile sets. Honestly, I think these three tile sets, much as they use the same groups, I think they're probably the second best in the entire of Neverwinter Nights, because they are versatile. You really can do a lot with them. They've got a particular style which I like, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty good. So anyway, I just want to quickly show something with this evil metal temple here. So tile splicing. Again, I press shift, I press right click, and I copied that tile. Now I'm going to do the same here to delete that tile. Now I'm going to paste in that tile again. And I'm going to paste it in again. And again. You can create, by tile splicing from the evil temple, this really cool large metal structure. Of course, it's not supposed to be done this way, so now you've got this blank area here you can see through. You're going to want to fill that in somehow. Let's see, maybe I can turn that around, put it in. No, that won't let me do that. Okay. So because I am taking one part of a model and removing the tile, I then need to use placeables to fill in these little white holes, because there you can see missing textures. But it allows you to create some, big interesting structures. Tile slicing is great, and it really opens up a lot of possibilities. And this structure here is a particularly good one for doing it with. So yeah, these tile sets, they're really good, they're really useful. There's the facelift version for the Rural Winter in the base Neverwinter Nights version. On that link I shared here, you can get a facelift version for the rural tile set. There isn't one for the tropical one. Keep in mind, if you use the rural override, it uses these very leafy trees, which will block the view quite a lot from areas that you are working with. Um, so let's quickly move on, because we're taking a lot. It's all taking quite a lot of time here. I just need to mute my microphone for a second, then I will continue. Okay, so I just need to drink again, and I can answer any questions. Hopefully get through the rest of these tile sets quite soon. There is a lot to get through, but it's worth having that information if you're wanting to create. I'll just mute the microphone while I drink. I'm still here. By all means, ask any questions, and I will answer them.
I actually do have a question, Agron.
Sure, go ahead.
Haven't really had the chance to check on my end, and I don't really know how to check, but I added some placeables that should be under Dwarf City. Do you mind if is there a possible way you could like check one of the placeables right quick?
I'm not actually in the Aralith module here.
Oh, my
I'm
bad.
working
My bad.
because I'm working with the basic Aralith builders engine that anyone can download from the vault. This is basically a tuition video for making modules from scratch. So I haven't actually got the Aralith modules open, because they're much more complex. So this is
Right,
basically a
right.
hack 3 engine that anyone can work with. But I'll certainly check later on.
Well, thank you. Because I'm not sure if I was able to check I'll set the textures right, so I'm kind of worried if it's
They
not
look
usable or
great, what
not.
I
Yeah.
saw. But no, these tuition videos are basically showing people how to build with Neverwinter Nights without using any hacks or custom placeables.
Oh, yeah, and I missed that part of the like
No problem.
just joined in. Yeah, right.
Okay, unmuted again. The next tile set to look at is Crypt. It basically works very similar to Dungeon. Down here in Terrain, you have got three basic options. Your floor, so your pits, and your corridors. And of course there's a bridge here for going over the pit. The bridge might be for water, might be for pits, but a lot of the tile sets basically work this way. They have a floor option, a corridor option, and then pit or water. In the case of the Underdark, I believe it has both, but generally most of these tile sets have one or the other. The groups here, they're very few. They're mostly just thematic platforms. And then the features, again, very few. Remember, features are just one by one things for putting in the floor sections. It's also where you'll have your exits and your stairs and so forth. Now, I really like the crypt style tiles there. I like the textures of it. It's obviously got this death theme everywhere, so it's going to be hard to repurpose it to do anything else with it because you can see the cobwebs in the wall here, the crypt openings. What I rather like with this when working with it is when you it creates these little openings. And when you want to do excessive placeable work, you can put things inside. And it can look rather nice. So let's say I go to skeleton remains and put a skeleton in here. Or I want to put skulls and candles so you'll see the light reflecting on the inside of these. It can look rather nice. And when it comes to creating dungeons with traps and everything else, and again in later tuition videos we'll talk about how to set up traps, the crypts works really well. You're not going to be able to use it for many other purposes. I mean, I've used it for temples, sure, by changing some of the textures on the floor and covering up these walls with bookcases and things. But for the most part, you're going to want to use it as crypts. It's not really a bad thing because undead is a big part of the game. You're going to be wanting to use a lot of crypts. Now, keep in mind with all of these tile sets, you can really make them look different depending on what lighting you use, what fog you use, how you dress them. Two tile sets, two areas using the same tile set can look very different. What I also really appreciate is anything that has got pits because you can create some pretty interesting landscapes. And you might want to fill the pit with something. If you're not using hacks, you can go to miscellaneous in parks, and here I believe we have some water or rocks. So you could have rocks at the bottom of your pit, or you could have them filled with water. I don't know. I rather like that. I like anything that gives this feeling of depth. I like some of the model work in this here. For instance, like these statues just look kind of cool. Yeah, it's a decent tile set. And, undead's just a big part of the game. So, from crypts to what is probably my least favourite tile set. The tile set that makes me mad as hell. And it's the dungeon. For a game called Dungeons and Dragons, they really dropped the ball on making the dungeon tile set. The dungeon tile set is, not only is it ugly, lacking versatility, it's just kind of senseless. You should be able to create all kinds of different dungeons, and this just makes it difficult because every dungeon has got this endless amount of lava over everywhere in the walls and whatever. These really quite jagged looking shapes. I mean, look at here. Look how poor that texture is. You can see this cut off here. You can clearly see, like, it's almost like someone's just put clip art down. It's awful. And then the platforms. Just properly meaningless things. When I'm designing areas, I try to give these things a reason for being. Like, what's the narrative? What is this? Why is there a little pit with lava with this thing in the... And honestly, they could have done better. It would be fine if this was just one dungeon. It would be fine if you had one particular themed dungeon and the theme of that dungeon was just lava and weird runes on the floor and stuff that doesn't really make any sense. It's not that this is necessarily bad in itself, but going through dungeons should be like a big part of the game. You're going to need lots of different dungeons. And not only do you only get one dungeon tile set with Neverwinter Nights, but it's so weirdly specific. Yeah, I mean, I really don't like it. It's got lava, which can allow you to do some interesting things. You could create an area that's entire lava and then put some floor down in the middle of it and then put some wall in the middle of the floor and then use it to create what looks like a building in the middle of a lava lake. But for the most part, it's it's just so limiting for a game that should have a lot of options in that regard. What probably annoys me most is it. Let's have a look at the exits. So this is one of our exits. This is another of our exits. And this is exit number 3. So here are our 3 exits. Exit 1, exit 2, exit 3. This is where you're going to be coming in and out of, and where the creatures are going to be coming in and out of in your dungeon. Now this is my problem with it. The doors are all too small for large creatures. It's called Dungeons and Dragons, but the dragon's not going to be able to come and go through this place. It just needs a bit more height. And I wish that Neverwinter Nights had improved something with more of a had something with more of a sort of Moria feel to it. I mean, I'm being unkind. This lava is cool, and the sounds you can with sounds added in, it's possible to make kind of some cool looking areas if the lighting and sound is right. It just lacks versatility. You can't do many different types of dungeon with the dungeon tile set, and that bothers me. And it would also be really good if you could raise or lower the terrain so you could feel that you were going deep. But if not, it's one of these flat tile sets. I just feel that with dungeon they should have worked a lot harder. Okay, I'm running a bit short of time now, so let's go through the last tile sets relatively quickly. What do we have left? Okay, well, we have quite a few, a bit more left. Okay, I'm going to have to separate this into 2 different streams. I can't get through all of these now because the Underdark's going to take a little while to talk. But let's finish up on Desert. So here is the desert tile set. Our terrains are very simple. We've got the chasm. We've got the cliffs. trench is actually just like this very narrow, very shallow little trench. I don't really have much reason to use that in narrative other than by making artificial streams. So what I mean by artificial streams is I put that trench down, then I go to the placeables, I find water, I put the water down, I lower the height of the water, a little bit more, and there you see you can create like kind of streams. But you know, it's not great. So that's basically what you have, and then these walls. They're the basic terrains, and then we have obviously the bridge to go over the chasm, same as the bridge over the water in the other ones. Then we have the groups. Just sort of quite thematic little buildings for it all. Not much there, and with some pretty basic textures. But I like this buried. This is a really nice tile. This one, like the top of a building that's been buried in sand. A shipwreck. I'm never really sure why that's there, given there's no water in this area. The same temple that you get in the rural tile set, but with a desert feel to it. And the same tent you get in the... oh no, it's a different tent in the desert one. And then some features. Some of the nicest features in this kind of the stuff you can put in the walls here. Carved corner. Kind of like this, being able to create these what look like the ruins of cities in the corner of the walls. Looks rather nice. Steps down the edge of the chasm to a door underneath, which is rather good. And then I think there are steps up that you can have going up into the up the cliff stairs here. So yeah, it's rather nice, the desert tile set. The textures are good. Doesn't really crash. There's no big outstanding bugs with it. You're going to want to use a fair amount of placeables, and you're really going to want to get the sound and lighting right to give the effect. Obviously, in Aurora we've done the abyss with the desert tile set. I like that it has this, this verticality between things down and things quite high up. It's a tile set I genuinely really like. You can create some interesting stuff with it. But okay, that's like 2 hours now on Discord, which is long enough for me for today. I will, given that I might even do it later this evening, given that Twitch Studio seems to be closing down, I will at least finish the second of these tile set videos, possibly later today, or certainly in the next couple of days, and then move on with other instructional videos. So okay, there'll be a second part of this tile set video, but for now I will stop.